Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CyberWire's Research Saturday, presented by Juniper Networks. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is our weekly conversation with researchers and analysts tracking down threats and vulnerabilities, and solving some of the hard problems of protecting ourselves in a rapidly evolving cyberspace. Thanks for joining us. And now, a quick word about our sponsor, Juniper Networks. NSS Labs gave Juniper its highest rating of recommended in its 2019 Data Center Security Gateway test. To get your copy of the NSS Labs report, visit juniper.net/securedc or connect with Juniper on Twitter or Facebook. That's juniper.net/securedc. And we thank Juniper for making it possible to bring you Research Saturday. Thanks also to our sponsor, Enveil, whose revolutionary zero-reveal solution closes the last gap in data security, protecting data in use. It's the industry's first and only scalable commercial solution, enabling data to remain encrypted throughout the entire processing lifecycle. Imagine being able to analyze, search, and perform calculations on sensitive data, all without ever decrypting anything, all without the risks of theft or inadvertent exposure. What was once only theoretical is now possible with Enveil. Learn more at enveil.com.
Well, I'd had one of these Wacom tablets for a while, and then I had to reinstall it to get it working on a new computer.
That's Robert Heaton. He's a software engineer with Stripe. The research we're discussing today is titled Wacom Drawing Tablets Track the Name of Every Application That You Open.
So I downloaded the drivers, I plugged it in, and as I was installing the drivers, it said, please could you accept our privacy policy? And I found that quite surprising because a tablet is essentially a mouse. So I was like, well, why does a mouse need a privacy policy? So I know no one ever actually reads these things, but I did. And to be fair, it was quite clear, sort of in the standard of these kinds of things. But it said, we sort of want to send a bit of information to Google Analytics. It's not very much, don't worry. And so I was like, this seems worth looking into. So I did. It was quite simple to do. I just set up a proxy to route the traffic through a program called Burp Suite so that I could have a look at the information. And as I wrote, it turned out that they were sending, most interestingly, the name of every program that I opened, that I tabbed to, which I found quite surprising.
Yeah, I mean, let's dig into that. I think like you, on the one hand, I think I would be surprised that something like a tablet like this, as you say, similar to a mouse, would require some sort of privacy statement. I suppose, on the other hand, it doesn't surprise me that anything has a privacy statement these days in the world we live in. Is that your sense as well?
I suppose so, but I still did find it quite jarring. I think I would say if it didn't connect to the internet in any way and didn't send any information anywhere, I'm very much not a lawyer, but I would expect it not to need one.
Well, let's go through some of the details of how you were able to see what exactly they were sending home.
Sure. Using a technique and a tool called a proxy, and it just means that instead of having the traffic go directly from the program, from the Wacom driver to their servers, I instead said, okay, could you please just send it via a program that I was running on my local computer. As I mentioned before, this program's called Burp Suite. So the way you use it is you start Burp Suite on your laptop or your computer, and you say, okay, listen on localhost, just locally on the computer on a port. It doesn't really matter what port. And then you tell your system, in this case, just saying, okay, could you send all HTTP or HTTPS traffic via this proxy? So that means that instead of sending its traffic directly to Wacom or to Google Analytics, the driver, because it was well behaved, it respected these settings, it would send that traffic to Burp Suite. Burp Suite could log it just to the screen so that I could see what it was, and then it would just send it off to the place where it was originally intended to go. One sort of other interesting thing you have to make sure to get right here is because this traffic is TLS encrypted, that means that the Wacom driver is expecting to receive a TLS certificate, it's called, that is valid for www.google-analytics.com. And obviously, because I'm not Google, I don't have that kind of certificate available. So you have to self-sign a certificate, meaning you generate a fake authority who is allowed to sign these things. You tell your computer, it's okay, trust certificates that come from this authority. And then you tell Burp to present this certificate. So the Wacom driver receives this certificate that is signed by your sort of fake certificate authority, but it's fine with that. It says, okay, this looks great. I'm happy to complete a TLS connection with you. And then everything proceeds as I described it before.
And so in terms of the information that was being sent back and forth, what sort of view did you have into that?
You could just see the exact contents of the HTTP requests that were going out to Google Analytics, which, as I said, so you could just see the exact data that was going. As I said, the most interesting part was very much these the names of the programs that you were tabbing to.
I suppose on the one hand, I could see a company like Wacom being able to use this sort of information. I could see them saying, well, we want to make sure that our product works with a variety of software packages out there, and one of the best ways for us to do that is to know what people are using our products with so that we don't end up having a bunch of people using something that we haven't tested for. I could see that being a reasonable explanation from their point of view, but still raises some flags for you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I absolutely believe that was the purpose behind this, and that it's not like they were getting this data and then doing something evil or horrendous with it. That they did just want to know how their product works, and that's sort of a natural thing to want to do. I feel like that just doesn't give you the right to take this information. This is still surprising information that people were quite unhappy that was being taken from them. And I think something that I was thinking about is that it's almost unfortunate for Wacom that their product in its natural state, the natural way that it works, doesn't require them to send these HTTP requests. If you're just some kind of SaaS product that then, like, I don't know, Asana or Trello or literally anything, then in order to use your product, the users have to send you data. They have to tell you what they want, how they want to interact with your product. So you get this usage information automatically. And it's almost just unfortunate for Wacom that their product doesn't require that. So when they try and do that, it seems surprising and jarring.
Now, with the tools that you were using, would it have been within your capabilities to simply shut off the flow, to interrupt that data being sent back to them?
Yeah, certainly. There's several ways to do that. I mean, and again, to Wacom's credit, I very much think this is not something they should do, but to their credit, it's something you can just turn off in the driver settings. You can say, I think it's called the Wacom Experience Program. I don't want to participate in this. And if you click no, as far as I know, I'm sure it just stops sending this data. But then alternative ways, if you didn't trust that or you wanted something more sort of broad and far-reaching, you could, for example, probably the easiest way is if you used something like a device, some software called a Pi-hole that I believe you put on your network, and you do your DNS resolutions via that. So DNS is when you say you want to talk to a domain, say googleanalytics.com, your computer or the internet backbone, it doesn't really understand domain names. It doesn't say, okay, I'm going to route this to googleanalytics.com. It only understands IP addresses. So in order to send data to Google Analytics, first your computer does a DNS lookup. So it asks a DNS server, what is the IP address for this domain? And then it will say, oh, it's 152.14. whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the way that these kind of devices work is that you send your DNS requests via them, which means that it can either send the request onto a real DNS server to get a real response, or it can just black hole it and say, I'm going to throw this away, or just return gibberish or something like that. And that would mean that your entire computer or potentially any device on your network would be unable to figure out where on the internet googleanalytics.com is, which means that none of them would ever be able to talk to it.
Now, when you posted this blog post, did you expect to get the attention that you've gotten here? There's been quite some widespread light shown on what you discovered.
I actually sort of did. I felt like I found a couple of things like this in the past, which have all been quite received similar sorts of interest. I think my favorite one was, I think a year or two ago, which was a Chrome extension called Stylish, it was a wonderful Chrome extension where you could add custom CSS rules to change the way that different websites look. And it was just wonderful. It means you could hide distracting bits of Facebook or change the color of a background or something like that. But at the same time, it just secretly logged the full URL of every single website that you visited and sent it back to their servers and nefarious tracking reasons. And so this was something I discovered just by chance, and I wrote about it and published it. And it was a very similar reaction where people were just sad and upset that this thing they liked was taking data from them. I think that is much more nefarious, in my opinion, than what this Wacom product is doing. But I think it's something that people find suspicious and don't like and get upset when they find out what's happening.
Has there been any response from Wacom themselves?
I think they did write a blog post that I actually only found recently, just explaining basically what you were suggesting before, where they're saying, well, we want to know how our device is used. It's all anonymous, et cetera, et cetera. Which again, I get it. It's fair enough, but I still don't think it gives you the right to take this data like that.
Ideally, how would you like to see them set this up? What would be a way for them to do this that you would find acceptable?
Shortly after I published this, I actually set up a new iPhone. And as part of that installation process, you set up your name and email address and all of that. And then there's a very big screen that says, do you want to send analytics data to Apple? And I think it tells you something about what that might involve. And you can just click, yes, I do, or no, I do not. And that's it. That's the end of it. And I think that was quite pleasantly clear. I understood that. I felt like, well, I personally never send people data like that. But I could see someone saying, well, actually, I don't. I'm happy to send this stuff if it makes products better.
So that sort of thing, rather than, I suppose, burying it within an end-user license agreement, to be overt about it and really require some sort of an acknowledgement or a response from the user, that's the sort of thing that you find more appropriate. I
think so. And in this situation, to be fair, again, the installing the driver did require you to say, yes, I would like to join the Wacom experience program. But no one really knows what that is. To me, it looked like something you had to click yes, otherwise the product just wouldn't work, which is not true. You could click no, but it very much didn't look like that. It was very unclear. In fact, someone said to me, oh, well, if you're interested in this, you'll be interested in, I think it was the Logitech mouse that does something very similar. So I got all excited. I downloaded some Logitech drivers and I started installing them. And they actually did exactly what I just described for Apple, where they said they had one big screen saying, is it okay if we send analytics to ourselves? You can click no if you want, and that's fine. And again, it was quite open up front. And so I think that's a good way to approach it, although in that situation, it did spoil my fun.
It really is interesting how it seems as though as awareness of these sorts of things increases, there's more subtlety here. The things that people find acceptable versus what they don't, what they find just creepy. It seems like we're establishing what the norms should be. We're starting to settle in on what people are willing to accept and are not.
I think so. I think it's generally fair enough for an application or a device to record some information of some sort about the way that you use it specifically, like not how you interact with other things on your system or anything like that, but just the way that you use it. I personally, again, if given a choice, I don't give anyone any of this information, but I think at that point it's sort of fair enough. But then I sort of think about it where I feel like this Wacom case is quite convenient, whereas it was very easy to find. It was even in their terms of service, and it was very surprising and upsetting to people. But if you think about the data that the much larger companies and more ubiquitous ones like Facebook and Google and so on are collecting, that's much harder to track. You can't sort of just put a proxy on your computer and they say, aha, I've got you. Now I can write a blog post that will get everyone very interested and so on. It's instead maybe they're sort of purchasing some data from over here, or they're getting this data and joining it up from two different products that you use both on their services. So it's almost more concerning, I think, and has more impact, but is harder to pinpoint and harder to reason about because it's much murkier.
What is your advice for people who feel like they want to have a better view into these sorts of things in their day-to-day to have a sense for what's being collected? Do you have any tips for folks?
I would suggest just start by, if something asks for access to something, I personally just almost always click no until there's some very useful reason for it. If you want to access my contacts, no. If you want to access the camera, no. And eventually, maybe if you prove that your reliability and trustworthiness and usefulness, then maybe I can start sharing some information there. No matter what you think about the sort of economic trade-offs of using ad blockers, I think you just have to use ad blockers at the moment to stop yourself getting tracked as much all around the internet. I've noticed recently that, I don't know if this is a new thing, but the large social media companies like Facebook and Twitter have these pages where you can view the information that or at least some of the information that they have on you, which is quite eye-opening. I think there's actually a lot that they don't show you as well, but it shows you, for example, what companies have given them your email and said, oh yeah, this person's my customer, or what companies have sent Facebook additional information about you. And that's just quite interesting, if nothing else.
Yeah, it really is. It's eye-opening, I think. And,
indeed.
Yeah.
It's always just a trade-off with these things, I feel, between the amount of effort you're willing to put in to get a particular kind of reward. And that's particularly difficult here because the rewards are so vague and amorphous and difficult to evaluate. Like if you're willing to use disposable email addresses for everything, and maybe you use Tor for everything as well, then your life will be harder, but you'll also be tracked less across the internet. So it's whether that's a worthwhile trade-off for you.
That's Robert Heaton. He's a software engineer with Stripe. The research we discussed today is titled Wacom Drawing Tablets Track the Name of Every Application That You Open. We'll have a link in the show notes. Thanks to Juniper Networks for sponsoring our show. You can learn more at juniper.net/security or connect with them on Twitter or Facebook. And thanks to Enveil for their sponsorship. You can find out how they're closing the last gap in data security at enveil.com. Funding for this CyberWire podcast is made possible by RSA Conference, where the world talks security. Through global events and year-round content, RSAC connects you to cybersecurity leaders and cutting-edge ideas for a safer, more secure future. Learn more at rsaconference.com. The CyberWire Research Saturday is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Elliot Peltzman, Haru Prakash, Stefan Vaziri, Kelsey Bond, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening.